Welcome to the Common Bridge, the podcast and YouTube TV channel that is fiercely nonpartisan, where we discuss the issues of the day, the opportunities of the moment, and some potential policy solutions. We have a great guest with us today. For those of you that listened to episode 77 of the Common Bridge, we had a discussion with the voice of California Central Coast, Nativo Gonzalez. We took a look at the status of the American dream, where we are today, what the future may hold. And we just got a lot of real positive comments on the episode with Mr. Gonzalez. And today we have another voice with her perspectives on the United States of America today and what the future might bring. So we welcome to the Common Bridge, Tamika Hamilton. Ms. Hamilton is an Air Force veteran, a recent candidate for the United States House of Representatives. She's a native of Maryland who has made her home in, I want to say it's North Central California. We're delighted to share her voice with the listeners and viewers of the Common Bridge. Tamika, welcome to the Common Bridge.
Thank you for having me, Rich. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Great. You ready to talk about the issues of the day and some opportunities of the moment? Maybe we kick around a few policy ideas?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, great. Our listeners like to know something about the background of the people that are coming on our program. Where did you spend your early days? What was life like? And what kind of academic or military work have you done? And what are you up to today?
So, like you mentioned, I am originally from Maryland, born and raised. I'm the oldest of four. I was really privileged to have both sets of grandparents who really just took me under their wing. My grandmother brought me home from the hospital. I was born to a teenage mom, and I did all of everything up till I think, from school was in Maryland, and then I enlisted into the United States Air Force straight out of high school. I was still in high school. And my grandfathers were like, "What are you gonna do? Are you gonna go to the Army?" Because they were Army. And I said, I don't know, maybe. And they're like, no, you're going to the Air Force. It's like, well, you're already telling me what to do. So I made my way through to the Air Force. I've actually served 14 years active duty. And then the past 3.5 years, I have been in a reserve status. And that's how we came to California. My husband's law enforcement. He was a Navy vet. And then he transitioned to be a police officer. He was a police officer when we were stationed in Maryland. And then he came here to California. And so, and we made California our home for almost a decade, and we love it here very, very much. And we have 4 children, and I'm actually pregnant with the 5th right now.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we're due in June. And
nice.
And I know people were just like, "How do you do it?" I'm just like, my grandmother had 15 kids. So it's like one of those things where it's like, we just do it, right? I credit my grandparents on giving me such an amazing life and just showing me what it was to be strong in times where they went through some hard times, and they just showed me how to be strong, And so when it came to starting to run for this campaign, it was just like, let's go. And, because people told me, it was going to happen, that people wouldn't vote for a Black woman here in Northern California. And like we were discussing off camera a moment ago, is that it was all a lie, because we received 45.3% of the vote and won 5 counties, and we're literally 5 points shy of taking the whole race. But this race came down to money and reach, and we just didn't have enough to finish the job. But when we move into 2022, and now that this race is targeted, I do believe that we'll be able to do that and be in the House of Representatives.
Well, that would be a tremendous accomplishment. And let's go through some of those issues that you're going to face. Look, when people think of California, they think about the beaches, the mountains, the big cities, Silicon Valley, Hollywood. You're in a place called Dixon, California, and that's where you were seeking the U.S. congressional seat for California's 3rd district. Where is that district, and how would you describe it for our audience?
So it is considered the East Bay portion of it, because We have a southern part that's closer to Berkeley and, Oakland area. And then we have the northern part that's, kind of resting right under Reading. It is, I call it a little America, because it's like a melting pot of the North and South. You're going to get your little bit of city and you're going to get your farmland and, heavy ag. This district is a purple district, meaning that the ideologies of, if we're talking political parties, are very close together because it's only 5% gap between Republicans and Democrats registration. And so you have a lot of people that come from a diverse background of just either military, because it's 2 military bases here, or ag. And then we also have the largest Sikh population in America, which I have grown to I love the community so much, and they have just been such a blessing to me. And so, you have this like these groups of people that really represent the nation. And I'm just like, how come no one knows about this district? And so I always try to like push that hard, that this is literally what it is, what America is, and it's District 3.
And look, California's been called a one-party state. You ran on the Republican ticket, and I'm sure that was an uphill battle. I don't know what the remedy is for that. I know people have suggested, like, let's make California 5 states. And some people, look at particular candidates that they're running on a single issue or perhaps a few. You seem to have broader concerns. So what caused you to run for Congress, and what was your message to your electorate?
So I'm just a regular mom. I'm not, I don't come from any political background. This is my first time running. I was going to city council meetings and town halls, and because, here in and it's a one party rule state. That's not like a joke or, a narrative. It really is from a perspective of, who, from a legislation, who has the power, right? And you don't even need a Republican to make a law pass here in California. That's what, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. That's what it is. It's not a narrative. It's not like some like gotcha. It's literally, you don't need a Republican to pass a law here in the state of California. So everything that you see coming down the pipeline is Democrat legislation. And when I started this, I obviously was just like, I didn't know all the things, to be honest with you. I didn't know how to start. I just was like, okay, God, I prayed. I was like, help me to figure out a way to do this. So I started meeting with Republican groups in the district and started getting my feet wet that way. But the thing that caused me is thinking I won't be able to live in California if things continue this way. And then people were like, well, why go federal? It's like, there is no one at the federal level that is speaking out against what's happening here in California. It's sounding the alarm. Gavin Newsom has all but decimated small businesses in the state, and is driving people to the point to where we're losing 2 congressional seats. And no one's talking about it. It's like he's up until recently, he's been a media darling. And we have to have people that are going to be brave enough to speak out about what's happening. And this is a party aside. This is, you don't lose 2 congressional seats if you don't have a problem with the leadership.
Yeah, and look, this is I think one of the issues that I am battling. I don't think that this is a Democratic country, a Republican country. I detest the labels of red, blue, purple. That's like sports teams, right? And I think we can cheer those sports teams on. The American dream isn't red. It's not blue. It's not purple, Democratic or Republican. This is a recent phenomena that we're talking about the American dream that way. And that American dream was always a fair chance for a better life. And I asked Nativo Gonzalez of the Central Coast, California, Santa Cruz, is the American dream still alive? So is it?
I would say yes. It's going to take a lot of work. I think that what we were able to do here in District 3 with my race is an example of exactly what we hear about from other generations, is that they worked hard, they put in the hours, they slaved in a sense,
Sure.
doing so much work and not getting very little, then boom, it just happens, right? And that's what we did here. It's like I didn't give up. People told me, I can't express to you how people told me it could not be done, and no farmer was going to support me, because this is about 80% ag. That I wasn't going to make it because I was a woman or because I was Black. It was just like all these things, and these are people that you look to for mentorship and guidance. And I was just like, you know what, God, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep pressing. And we did so much with very little, and we're able to starve him off, not to in single digits. This is a man that's been in office for literally since the 60s. So it's like, how was a young woman like myself able to do that? I
Well,
didn't give up.
I think that speaks to people have an innate sense that things have changed and not necessarily for the better. And one of the things that we talked about on the Common Bridge was where the reporting industry's gone. And
Mm.
I asked Joe Ferrello, I said, Joe, would a responsible parent teach their children to believe the news? Now, you're a parent. What do you tell your kids about the news when they watch it? Because they can look at one channel and they get, one set of perspectives. They look at another channel, they get something completely different about the exact same event. How do you talk to your children, and what can we do about that nationally? Because in my humble view, that's a national issue of what is our news reporting's role, and how are the people that are in that industry fulfilling that responsibility?
So for me, I am a heavy filter for what my children consume, my homeschool children anyway. Well, not anyway, but my children are homeschooled, and I filter everything. They don't watch the news. They don't know what's going on unless I tell them. The first time I actually had to talk to them about, what's happening in the world, so obviously with me running, because I wasn't home, and what mommy's doing and how we're going to do it. And then with the closing of schools, because they couldn't see their friends, or when the churches had to close down here in California, that's when I had to explain that to them. But we were able to do that. I just don't think it's healthy for young children to consume the news. That's just my opinion. I can't speak for anyone else.
How old is your oldest child?
My oldest child is 17, and he's into everything but the news. And
Okay.
so I didn't have to worry about that, and then he trusts us to, what I mean? I just don't have those kind of issues to where it's like, I got to worry about, because we've already have so many things that's just like, there's little explaining we have to do. And
But some of the things that have been in the news, so
Mhm.
it's almost unavoidable. So you have California,
Yes.
and now Texas, the two most populous states in the country. They've experienced energy shortfalls. I mean, this is supposed to be a developed country where reliable power seems to be, part of that fabric.
Right.
So you've got California as a big government state, highly regulated, and Texas really the antithesis, lean government, lightly regulated, same kind of disasters. What does this say about government effectiveness in general?
That's what I will say is that no government is foolproof from, natural disasters, but and I can't, obviously I'm not governing in Texas, and I don't have a spot anywhere in the California government. But what I will say is that it when it comes down to like the energy crisis, it's like, what are the things that were put in place that are supposed to warn us that we're not taking advantage of? Like in California, for instance, it's like, we know about the wildfires. What safeguards are we going to put in place to make sure that we don't have a disaster that affects the whole community like it did in Chico? What are we doing to prevent the things that we're warned about? And obviously government's not perfect. And so I would always go back to the fact that, are we getting the government we deserve, and are we holding our government officials accountable when those shortfalls happen? And then to your point about, this red, this blue, it's purple, it's like if we were just holding people just to the same standards and not dividing it for political parties, we wouldn't be in this mess right now. Because when I say in a narrative mess anyway, because I think that the people will be able to consciously be able to make decisions based on the facts in front of them versus, oh, they were Republican, that's why this happened, or they're a Democrat and that's why this happened. And so
That is very, very, very well said. And look, if we can't keep the lights and the heat on,
right.
okay, and I don't know how we're going to do with rebuilding infrastructure. We've just had Dr. Alley on, a climatologist, climate scientist, and we did talk about the wildfires in California. And we had Dr. Rick Geddes talking about infrastructure. And I think you've just summed it up, is that, look, it's not working. And I heard what you said. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, you're not getting the job done.
Right.
And look, part of that job of government, of course, is to educate our youth and those that arrive in the country, just the fundamental structure, like civics. And we're having a debate about 1619 versus 1776. And do people even know how the Electoral College is supposed to work? And have you given any thought to who benefits from a misinformed or uninformed electorate?
Oh, well, we all know that what people would deem the establishment would benefit from people not being informed. That's just, I mean, that's always going to be the crux of it. It's people that literally have the power and want to keep the power, regardless of what party.
Yeah, and now so some of your kids are in your homeschooling, and some are going to a faith-based school or a public school?
So my children they're in homeschool right now. So it's been a blessing to us. I know that's not an option for everyone, but it's been a blessing to us. And I don't see, them going in going back to the regular school. And we were making our own sacrifices because, military and cops don't make that much money, but they were going to faith-based school before COVID hit. And so I just made a decision to pull them out because I didn't want to deal with the mess. And again, however parents want to raise their children, that's their decision. I'm not judging, but for me in my house, I had to think about what I want to subject my kids to. This past year has just been so many ups and downs. I didn't think it was for me. If I could do it and make the sacrifice, then we were going to do it. And homeschool has been a great success for us.
And look, traditionally, one of the occupations with the highest percentage of children in private schools are public school teachers. And I would venture that if we went to elected officials, we might find a lot of that. I know Gavin Newsom's kids are in a private school, yet their responsibility is to educate everyone, largely through the public school system.
Right.
And I just worry that, are we raising strivers, people that are looking to be employed at some point? But, did you ever think you'd see a day where we're actually having a debate about whether we should get our kids in school or not?
I don't think anybody ever thought it would be this way. I mean, it's been a year, and I have a really good friend. His name is George Ventura, and he has been doing interviews. He's a journalist, has been doing interviews with these parents and students who literally are dealing with alarming suicide rates in their communities.
It's terrible.
It's absolutely, it's stunning how it's not even, it should be a national crisis, and it's not. And I don't understand how we've gotten this far for, what is it? We're coming up, our COVID anniversary is March, and this month, and I'm thinking, what are we gonna, what message are we sending to children if they don't start school this year? In California anyway. What message are we sending? And then what are parents supposed to do if the fall comes and they're doing the same thing?
Especially on disadvantaged, lower incomes.
Yes.
Some of the more affluent areas, if the children are in public school, they've got enough resources to shift to online. They have a place to work at home. They have a supportive family structure, but the gap in education achievement is just going to get larger, it seems.
And just to piggyback off of that, if you don't mind, it's Black children in California have already have the lower they already were suffering under the California education system. Um, and and it not just because it's Black children, but it's like, if these children are suffering, what is happening to them while school was already in session? They were already suffering. They have the literacy rate is just it's not where it should be. So what's happening while they're supposed to be at home doing Zoom? And what about children with disabilities? I have a good friend who is her child is has Down syndrome. It's a struggle, and so and you don't hear about those things. You just don't hear about those things, and I think that it's a travesty, the learning loss, and and then we talk about suicides. It's not something that we're going to be easily be able to bounce back from. And so I think that people in California, parents in California, are at the end of it, end of their rope. So I hope to see some changes before it's too late.
I agree. And we did talk early on in the pandemic, April of last year, with Judge Milton Mack about the mental health crisis that we were already beginning to experience. And he talked a lot about the courts and the jails. And we had Sheriff Jerry Clayton on, and we had a frontline police officer, Bruce Helppie. We've had former U.S. attorneys and legal analysts on, and you have a husband in law enforcement, and you're dealing with children now not in the disciplines of school. What do you think the impacts are going to be around law enforcement and courts and jails and prisons? And what are we doing as a nation that's right, and what do we need to correct as far as that whole arc of the criminal justice system?
Well, one of the things that I actually was just talking to my communications director today about is, we have fallen into this dangerous trap of political correctness, which also leads us to not address things because, hands off, because that someone's going to get offended. And that's a huge hurdle that we're going to have to jump over in order to have some kind of progress um, when we're talking about mental health, when we're talking about the new, for example, in California, just to kind of like bring it to some context, is that, there's certain crimes that there's certain crimes that you're not going to get reported on there's not going to have a report on anymore. And, and what is that going to do to a community? What's that going to do to, people saying, what, I don't want to live here in San Francisco anymore because they're not, if I get robbed, my window gets broken in my car, they're not going to come. It's the relationship between police officers, the community, and the government officials. We have to come to some place of, what, this is not going to work. This is going to work. We've seen what happened over the past year, and we just have to be honest. And I think that because a lot of things have become political, we're forgetting about people. And I could tell you that I was a regular person just wanting to live my life, did not want to get involved in any of this. And then I'm like, oh my God, I could, and it'd be easy to say to just move, right? But they're going to take these policies, like what happens in California, New York is said that it goes across the nation. I was like, there's no way, I'm not going to run. And so we have to fix home. We have to be honest about what's happening. And then we got to change course of some things that we failed at in the past 2 years with this political correctness, because I think it starts there. Because a lot of laws have shifted and because of that. And that's my opinion.
Well, look, I think it's a strong opinion, and there's a lot of data that backs it up. We just had Stuart Taylor on, who is a co-founder of a group called Princetonians for Free Speech. And he spoke about the free speech crisis on the restriction on college campuses. And then I think very insightfully went on to say that goes on into public life when those college students go out and get jobs and are now part of the economy and part of the fabric of society.
Mhm.
And I think in some way it's related. I was having dinner this past week with some friends from Portland, Oregon, who actually live in Portland, and they're devastated. They said the downtown was so beautiful, it was so vibrant. They said we can't go down there because there are, you know, permanent kind of tent cities on all the sidewalks.
Right.
They can't get into the buildings have been destroyed and they're boarded up. The courts are boarded up. And I'm looking for where's the reporting on this? And I'm looking, well, who wants this? And similar stories from people that are in Seattle. And you just, why isn't this front page news? It's just beyond me.
Right. And it goes back to, you know, what someone's going to get offended by, you know. And sadly, it's going to take strong people, strong government, strong local government to start making some tough decisions to change course. I mean, we've seen that in, I think, Minnesota, where Ilhan Omar, for example, she's the congresswoman in that district. I think I'm not sure what number it is, but you know, they did this whole defund police, using it as an example. They did this whole defund the police over the summer, and now they've made a decision to rehire, add $6 million+ to the budget so that they can change course. It's going to take people to have the courage to realize that we got to get back to some normalcy, and that's going to include making some really hard decisions. And when I say hard, it's not hard to support people. It's not hard. It's just all about someone having the fortitude to say, you know what, this isn't right, and this is what we're going to have to do. And I don't care what political party is saying, don't do this, don't do that. What is the right thing to do? And it's to protect the people from that is to protect people and not your special interests. That's just all that's to it. And so I hope that we have more strong local government that shifts that way, so that then in turn the nation figures out a way to address it better as well.
Indeed, and you know, you think about it, we had protests or riots, civil unrest, where the sacking of the Capitol. We all can look at that and say that's not right, but it seems that the reporting was, you know, dramatically different about those. Tamika, before we came on, we talked a little bit about voting integrity, and you ran a hard race. It's a close race. You know, I mean, what you achieved is nothing short of, I don't want to call it a miracle, but it's noteworthy what you've achieved. It's a high watermark, and it sounds like you've still got fuel in the tank, and you're ready to get back at it. Good election, fair. You felt like you were treated fairly in the voting process.
I think I was. I had. It was just all about me putting myself in a position to say I'm not going to leave no matter what. You know, it's like, oh, and that's probably another conversation for another day, because there's so many different things you have to do when you're running for office. But the key thing for me is that I did not come into this as a Black woman, as a woman. I came into this thinking like, I have a future to protect my children, my community, which I love. We work in this community, we serve in this community. And I did not see any other way to move forward than to get involved. And and of course, you're going to have people that discriminate. You're going to have all of those things, especially when you're trying to do something this, you know, what people would say. Yeah, one guy with this consultant I met, he's like, "Why do you want to destroy your life like this, Tamika?" And it's just like, if you're not
Yeah.
if you're not strong, it could hurt you. But you know, I have a really good support system. I have a great husband, and I have a beautiful family. And I had to think like, God, you know, is it discrimination or sexism? Is it going to be enough to push me in a direction of quitting? And it just wasn't. And I come from a stock of people that would not quit no matter what. And I had to, and I, again, like I told you in the beginning, my grandmother, she was a strong woman. All of my grandparents were strong people. Um, and they just didn't put that inside of me. And so I would tell people it wasn't easy, but it also isn't something that I ever imagined giving up on, because it wasn't going to be easy. I knew I was walking into a dangerous territory that most people have agendas, and I don't. I just want to help people. And
And
so,
I love the clarity of your message. And, you know, I also am realistic. I don't know any Black person that hasn't faced some discrimination, period. I mean, that all had it. And maybe it's a sensitive topic, but in my view, Black history is different than other people's history in the country. Nobody else, no other, racial group was divided into being less of a person. And we have to acknowledge that there's some overt and some tacit racism. I mean, in my lifetime, which is longer than yours, we had the Jim Crow era.
Right.
We had to pass the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and a lot of this resonates about giving everybody a chance. And where do we stand with, and again, very sensitive question, is Black Lives Matter with small letters, and then there's the movement Black Lives Matter with capital letters.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we stand with this, and where do we go, and can we get on the other side of racism in the country?
Well, I think that when we're talking about racism or any type of discrimination, I think, and I'm a woman of faith, you're not going to get rid of it because evil is always going to be present in the world. And that's just the truth of it. Now, can we make it to where it almost doesn't exist? I think that there's a possibility, but we also have to be honest about, like you said, and I thank you so much, because some people don't want to touch on Black history. They want to say we're all Americans, and then, and we are all Americans, but we're also Americans that have come from different backgrounds and have, different circumstances that brought us to this nation. And it's not something that a narrative shouldn't be created that we shouldn't be talking about those things. We got to talk about those hard things. I agree with that Black lives do matter. Like, that's just, it's silly to say it doesn't. Do I agree with the organization based on their ideology, based on what I've seen written? I do not. But am I going to throw away that there are some people that are within Black Lives Matter that literally want to just have a say in what's happening in their lives? I've seen interviews, and I'm just like, this is not what the media is showing. I feel like the fringe of things, versus there are people that are actually in communities working, trying to, get a better education for their kids. And it's not all what you saw on TV. Just like when people talk about MAGA, it's like, it's not all it's not all the bad of the group, if that makes any sense. And people
no, I'm tracking it, because I look at the during the conventions, okay, the Republicans never made any mention at all of climate change or the environment. And while we had cities literally in chaos, the Democrats said nothing about it, like it didn't exist.
Right.
And you've heard lately that, pundits, a lot of them have said that the destruction at the US Capitol would have been different had the demonstrators or rioters, I mean, pick your term, had not been predominantly white.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what to think about that. I don't know if you've given that any thought. Do you think they were treated different because of their race?
I think that everything the past 2 years has been treated differently because of race. And the media, and not all media is bad, because you and I are talking, right?
Right. I hope we're doing good. Okay.
Right,
We're doing our best.
No, we're fine. So not all
We're
media is
doing our
bad.
best.
Right. And my thing is, it's hard to talk about these topics, because right now everyone's like, you can't go all the way on you can't agree with this and and this because you're this side, and you can't. It's like, you have to look at everything. My one of my comms directors, he's on the school board, and someone had asked him, like, because he's a Black man, and he's achieved a lot here in Northern California. And then someone questioned him about Black Lives Matter. He's like, I'm not a chartered member, but there are some valid points. Let's just be, there's some valid points. And just like, there's nothing wrong with loving your president. It's just like, but I don't agree with violence. I don't agree with, the things that we've witnessed that have caused this country to literally come in an unrest. But I think that a lot of this has happened because we are afraid, or I shouldn't say we're afraid. It's just that if these conversations have not been a national issue, a national conversation, so that people can work out their differences, and so that we can be the America that other nations, believe we are and want to come to this country. and I think it's tragic all the way around because again, a lot of the times when we see the violence and we see what's happening, it starts because people aren't being heard and people aren't being treated fairly, and they're not getting a fair break when it comes to whatever they believe. And it again, it starts with what we're consuming. And there are parts of the media that that are not fair in their reporting. That's why for me, it's just like I am not going to bash anyone because I know that there's some truth there. And even if it's, some portions of it are ugly, or if the media just wants to show the ugly, there's some truth into what their message is. And so we have to find that.
I don't know that I've ever had a guest that I wanted to just jump up and like applaud with a standing ovation, but if I was ever going to do that, I would have just done it. Because I think you've really articulated that well. I'm going to be borrowing from that in my future broadcast.
You can have it.
So thank you. Well, what's so good about it was, you don't have to swallow something, in whole. It doesn't have to be lock, stock, and barrel. And that's the thing that I think we've fallen into. Well, if you agree with this one thing, well, you have to agree with everything else that goes with it. Or if you reject one thing, well, you're rejecting all this other stuff that goes with it. But I love that perspective. Look, there's some good there. There's some facts there. There's some truth there. And there's some other things there too. And we need to be able to discern amongst those things.
That's a good word.
Tamika, what things do we need to do to make sure that all Americans have a bright future? And let me just tell you a little something that troubles me. If we have a young person, of modest means, okay, that can we go to that young person and say, look, here's a way for you to work, educate, become, a person with a middle class standard of living. During that time in my life, we were told, thrift, save your money, marketable skills, develop something that somebody else wants, and then also deferred gratification, right? You don't have to have everything right now. Mm-hmm. And, there were jobs out there that people could have a middle-class standard of living. And I think about, the great employments in the big industrial companies, the auto companies as one example. And then I look and I say, okay, well, what are the big companies doing today? Amazon, I'll pick on them for a little bit. How many of their workers are seasonal or gig workers? Right. How many people say, wow, Amazon's doing great. If I could just get a job there, I'm on my path to a secure living where I have a healthcare, a retirement program, a vacation, a chance to make a little savings, build for a down payment on a house and such. But it seems to me that we've got this different economy and we're asking people to play by rules that the employer side is incentive to move away from. Mm-hmm. So how do we tell people, here's what you need to do, young person, to build a life in America? And what do we do with people of my generation to make sure that there's an opportunity for people going forward?
Oh, wow. So, and
take
obviously
all the time you need, 3-4 hours, whatever.
So I don't know everything, but what I will say is that I wanted, the first thing that came to mind is Starbucks, because I had a couple of friends that work for Starbucks, and they would, and I don't know if there's levels, so don't quote me on that, but at some point you would get help to go to school, you would partake in stock options, and I can't think of the other one, but it was a platform that felt like this would really help a young person achieve some success early on. And I think that, one of the things we're hearing about right now is student debt and how we got into this mess and how the government's taken over that. It's a mess. And I don't believe in canceling, student debt, because then what about the people that paid off their debt? I don't think that's fair. But what I will say is that it starts early. Everything starts early. And we have to find out with our children, is college the best option for them? Or is trade school the best option? Or is staying home for a year and working in a business locally, is that going to help them? And then they go to 2-year college. We are not exploring all those options. I think at an early age. That's my point of view, because I wish that that's something that the conversation I had when I was growing up. For me to get out and maintain to be middle class, I had to join the military. That's not for everybody. Same thing for my husband. And so I think that we have to be honest with that. Did America said in order for you to be successful, you should be going to 4-year college? That's not real. And so we have to do a reset. We have to talk about, should we give students or young adults from 18 to 22, whatever, a tax credit or a tax cut so that they can achieve success financially. Like those are the kind of things that I think about, because I think I would love to have middle class tax cuts, permanent middle class tax cuts, so that families aren't struggling, because right now the middle class is shrinking based in here in California. So I think it's something that should start early, honing and fostering whatever skills these children have and seeing where we can place them. And a lot of schools already do those things. But I think that, like you said, bringing people out of poverty, bringing people up, it's going to take a little bit more. And it's not going to be some easy fix overnight. But if we're aggressive with it, I think that the American dream is still possible for Americans if we put in that extra work that I think has been neglected, because we've said that in order for you to be successful, do well in school, go to college, and then you're going to get a great job. Well, they're not teaching them that certain jobs are certain majors aren't profitable when you get out, you know. And
Look,
so,
we need welders, we need people to fix the air
yes,
conditioning.
yes,
We need people that know how to build a bridge that won't fall over. There's a lot of that work that needs to go in there. And to me, is I think if everybody has a chance, okay, and to be, if they're really good at fixing air conditioners, great. They should be able to earn a decent living with that, not be forced to work 3 jobs and not have a chance to get ahead. Tamika, we've talked about the polarization in the country. We've talked about the need to unify. Imagine if President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris called you this afternoon and said, look, we want to sit down with you and get your perspectives on how to unify the country.
hmm
What might you tell them their biggest challenges are, and what advice would you give them?
Well, I would use my race as an example, because we have 29% registered Republicans here in District 3. And so that means that we won over a lot of independents and a lot of Democrats, to get the 45% that we received. And what I did was, I didn't make excuses for either party. I I was honest about the fact that this is what I came to do. This is why I'm here. And this is what I want to achieve with you supporting this congressional race. And it wasn't it was no drama, no narratives. It was just simply talking about the kitchen table issues that matter most to Americans. And I think that one of the biggest issues, and I've said this a million times, is reconciliation. The only way you're going to get any group of people down to a husband and wife who have a damaged relationship, what do you first do? You figure out what the problems are and you reconcile if you want to stay together. And this nation is deeply divided. And it is not a time to point fingers, because we have other nations that are looking at us as from a leadership standpoint. So I would say to them is that we got to come to a place of reconciling, seeing being honest and reconciling, regardless of Democrat, Republican. Here are the mistakes. This is what we're going to do, and so we can come back together, because we are our beacon of hope for the rest of the world. That
I,
is that.
I really like that. That it's, I kind of am hearing the conversation that you're sitting down with President Biden, Vice President Harris, just the three of you, and it's, look, we're going to move forward. You know, what do we need to do about healthcare? What do we need to do about educating our children? What do we need to do to make sure people can get educated and and have a savings account and such? And I just say it's too much of it is Republican versus Democrat. And I really like the tone that you've said. I can see why you've had such broad appeal, but also my heart kind of breaks for you a little bit that you have to try to fight that good fight inside this partisan structure. So thank you for doing that. I'm glad you're doing it because you've got the youth on your side like that.
I appreciate
What about risks that you see for Americans going forward, and maybe what might be a worst case scenario if we don't make some changes?
Right now, because the economy isn't open fully, I could talk about California, but businesses have, I think the last time I read, it was like 40% of small businesses aren't going to come back.
Oh my goodness.
So what that means is that we're killing off entrepreneurs. You're killing off dreams. We're killing off hope, and forcing people to make hard decisions that are going to make them also resentful, right? I mean, when you have to tie somebody down and basically say it's not going to happen because of things that you and I both know now that we have more language, now that we have more what is it called? More studies or whatever, that we can open. There shouldn't have to be a limitation to this, especially here in California. We're the only place that doesn't have schools open, I believe. And so, we're killing this the economy. We're killing hopes and dreams and entrepreneurship. And so I think that if we continue down this way, it's going to be hard for people to trust the government, and I'm not saying that you should fully trust any government anyway, but we should have some trust in the government that they're going to be doing some things in the best interest of the people. So I think that if we continue to push this economy down the road, then it's going to be really hard for people to trust and move forward.
Yeah, and even in closed, totalitarian economies, there is free enterprise. It's off the radar. It's the black market. It's done underground. Prohibition, right? There were speakeasies, and in Soviet era Russia, you could get any good you wanted, but you just couldn't get it through the official channels. So I'm hopeful that we will unleash the creativity and the innovation of the American people. In terms of when you think about policies that we might look at a national level, are there any that come to mind that are near to your heart that you feel like we must do? And are any that you're seeing being advanced that you're saying that's something we just shouldn't be doing?
One of the big things for me right now that I think about daily is how we are not handling the human trafficking in the nation. I feel like it's a topic that should be a national conversation. It shouldn't be something that we read. Hold on really quick. There's a child that comes. Yes.
Can I get
Sorry.
the big cupcake?
Yes, you can. Sorry.
Hi.
So I think that one of the
that answer, I think there may be more coming. If you get it, unless that was the last big cupcake. So.
That was the last big cupcake. He's so sweet. Right, that's my middle child. But I think that human trafficking is a huge issue that we are not discussing. Americans are the #1 consumers for human trafficking. And it's why is it like a small print article that we're reading? Why isn't it something that it is discussed on a national platform, more often? And so I just really feel like we're not doing justice to it like we could. And it's really important that we talk about it because, when we say we care about people, we want to do the best by people, it's like, why aren't we talking about the children that are suffering because of this, and the women that are being brought across this border and suffering? It just it pains me, and it's just like, why? There's always a big question mark of why isn't this a big issue or bigger issue?
Well, as you've articulated so well during our chat today, it's all part of that same arc. We're not educating children. That's hurting that next generation. We're trying to stifle people's spirit and their entrepreneurship. That is another attack. And then the human trafficking, when we're making people feel less than human. Tamika, this has been a great conversation. And as we wrap up today, what didn't we cover that perhaps we should have discussed today?
I think we touched on like really the heart of the issues that we're dealing with right now. I think I would like to end with the fact that, I know this is a hard time for so many people, and I can't even imagine, everyone has a different story. But I don't want people to give up. And um, I get emails and direct messages all the time, and people just wanting to give up on the nation because of what's happened over the past 2 years. And that's not just one side; it's both sides. Because like I said, I have a really diverse group of people that follow me, and we can't give up on this nation. We can't give up on our sovereignty, and we have to. Find a way to process what we're dealing with, and then also find a way to keep fighting. And so I just don't want people to give up. It's just this country is too important to throw in the towel.
I think that is a great place to end this. It's been a terrific conversation. I'm so honored that you've taken your time to be with us here. We do want to be fiercely nonpartisan. We do want to look at what the issues of the day are head on. We want to look at the opportunities of the moment, and we want to talk about how we can solve them, knowing that there's people like you that are willing to lean in and devote your life really encourages and inspires me. So Tamika Hamilton, thank you so much for being on the Common Bridge. This is Rich Helppie signing off on the Common Bridge.
Thank you so much, Rich.
Thank you for watching Richard Helppie's Common Bridge. Please click the subscribe button below. Also, tune into our podcast, Richard Helppie's Common Bridge, on Apple, iHeart, Amazon, and others. Also, be sure to visit us online at richardhelppie.com.